there anything else I wanted to do? Oh, someone joined my Discord that needs walls I wanted to give him. Okay, that's enough, and I wanted to copy this link and post it on the Starcraft 2 co-op server. Bam. Okay, so I think now I can actually start to do stuff. Yeah. So the plan for today is getting my my commanders ready for actually doing stuff on an array. So I guess I'll just start with Tychus, probably on hard. Pretty sure I'm not going to do brutal with randoms until level 1 Tychus. Yeah. Oh, new mode available. Definitely, yes. I don't know this. Yes. Yeah. Definitely new. What the fuck is going on with chat? Even why is the chat connection currently fricked? Oh, that's bad. I guess. Okay. Wait, how do I actually manage to like this, I think? Yes, okay. Stuff looks better now. I think I can't do anything anyway before the... oh god, how... yes, NG Bay.
Once a prisoner, has escaped and corrupted our systems to create his own forces. You must help me restore our control.
Yeah, I should have planned this out better, but... oh no, I can't see my work account again. Why? Why does this bug exist? Oh no. Oh fuck. Why? Oh, I can't even do the wash thingy. Yeah. Guess I kinda fucking up everything I can fuck up right now. Oh god. Wait. I actually have 3 guys in there. Do I? I don't have an idea how many workers I have, and that's bad. Also, it'll take a pretty long time to get out my first outlaw. Yeah, actually, that's actually 2, isn't it? Yes. Wait, Blaze is the only muscle available from the start? Oh god, I thought I could get like Rattlesnake or something. Wait, and the first... Oh god, I should have probably started with fixers because like...
Initial security terminal is clear.
Oh god.
There are several more.
Yeah. I forgot the problem with first level Blaze.
Warriors of many races, inspired by his battles in life.
So let's just get all of attack out.
I don't like this one bit. Time to do some outlaw recruit. I'm a bad man.
Yeah, I'll probably want my first outlaw before the second base.
Warning. I will
Having the
set out
price on
the next location
1000 is actually incredibly annoying. Yeah, but it's not like I can get a... Oh, the Twitch app is connecting to chat again. Nice. What the fuck? You know, it would be really nice if I could actually see chat. Or, I don't know if I even actually have viewers, but what the fuck? Am I actually dropping frames right now? No. Why can't I then not connect to chat? I don't know. Oh yeah.
Initiating security system rebuild. This will
I should probably have taken one less so I can grab that command center out at a fairly reasonable pace. Like, how the fuck am I now supposed to know how many...
He can destroy me. Can you prove him wrong?
What's in it for me?
guys are even in there? What the fuck? I should probably keep my Nakara in the back.
I am under attack. Care to assist?
Stupid.
Fucking Vikings.
Whatever it takes.
Like, I think I'll need 4 or 5 over there. Maybe?
Fighting the enemy for once.
Don't provoke me. That ain't really a magic word.
Ba-ba-bam, ba-ba-bam.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, General.
Restoration efforts have reached the halfway point.
Allies forces are attacking.
Can't I just please just attack that stuff? Thanks. No, kill this.
Gotta do.
Come on.
The enemy has raised a suppression tower. Their beams will interfere with my work
Like,
unless you
if the Zero tool actually AFK,
Yeah, General.
like Willy.
A man's gotta do what a man's gotta do.
Allies
systems were halted by tower strikes.
Oh, why did I only notice that now?
Only 25%.
I don't know if I can actually just carry those. Wait, is he AFK or did he... No, he did not leave.
I'm a bad man.
No, I just need to get down the suppression tower.
You can't fix stupid. That isn't here no magic word.
Guess I can get a second outlaw pretty soon. Probably cooked them so the suppression towers don't last as long.
Temporarily
Do I care for that attack wave? Yeah, I think I kinda need to care about it. Oh. Everything down here seems to be working out now. Holy fuck. I just don't have the damage to do this. Like, actually having their tool would be like really advantageous.
The transport is nearly ready. Relocating to the third terminal soon.
Oh, I'm probably stealing a second base. Why not? Although I might get supply blocked.
The next terminal now.
A whole mess of trouble is gonna land here on our base in a hot minute.
Your ally is
This is just a transport. It has no shields to defend me from these strikes.
Yes. Need to do stuff. Need to do stuff. Oh god, how am I supposed to stop that attack wave and defend the transport? I just hope that he can just kind of solo it. I mean, as long as it's just Vikings, so no. It's not just Vikings anymore.
your ally needs your help.
One of the data cores has not yet been breached by the rogue Calderine.
What the fuck, Nikara?
The purifiers would be grateful.
But it was still probably
A man's gotta do
worth to just micro Sam instead of Nikara. Oh, my upgrade's done, yes.
Upgrade complete. But how?
Why did I not actually pick the right one? I don't know.
what's in it for me. I didn't hear no magic word. You can't fix, stupid. Walk the walk.
Accessing security terminal and beginning data reset.
Oh god.
Here,
Will he push through?
gotta do what a man.
How is this? Yeah, I'm not going to get bonus objective.
Position.
I think I can completely forget that one. What the fuck?
I didn't hear no magic word. Okay, armchair general. Walk the walk.
Enemy suppression tower.
What? Why am I selecting Goliath? Why did my
A man's gotta do what
thing not do the things the thing is supposed to do?
But not clever. He has not discovered this data core yet, but we only have a little time remaining.
Okay, armchair general.
Oh god.
You can't fix.
Oh god, oh fuck, oh god.
System takeover is halfway complete. And yes, I am doing my best.
God damn, the fucking suppression towers deal a lot of damage.
Your
I
ally
am unable to progress due to the tower's interruption. The tower has ceased its fire. At least something is good.
This time I actually got the right upgrade, I think. Yeah, I stepped right into that. That was
He's found the data core.
very suboptimal micro.
I'm a bad man.
Your ally's fighting the enemy for once.
Get on the ship, you numbskull. Walk the walk. A man.
Oh yeah, I can only have 4 guys, I forgot.
Don't provoke me.
Suppression tower down. I have overridden 3/4 of the Taldarine's alterations. Hold fast. The
Oh god, this is actually painful.
I fear for the person.
Okay.
You can't fix stupid.
No, there wasn't a thing to increase that part.
System integrity verified. We are back online at this location.
These two.
What's in it for me? Okay, armchair general.
Wait, yeah, this was the one where it does a curve, right?
Man's gotta do what a man's
Yes,
gotta do.
okay.
Whatever it takes. Walk the walk. Howdy.
Somehow I always forget whether it's this one or the next
Don't
one.
waste my time. You can't fix stupid. I didn't hear no magic word.
Oh god, not having
Okay,
not having 3 medevacs and reduced medevac cooldowns also kinda fucks up everything.
We must guide it with the utmost attention.
whatever it takes. You can't fix.
Transport en route.
Hear no magic word. Walk the walk. Okay, armchair general. Whatever it takes. You can't fix.
Doesn't attack wave spawn when that thing is inside of the curvy thing? I'm not sure. I don't think so.
Magic word. Okay, armchair general. Walk the walk.
Oh,
What's in it for me?
why have I never seen that the hybrids on this map are actually holograms? I'm confused.
Fix stupid.
I actually thought the hybrids were the only wheel parts on here.
We must
Well, I can get all my upgrades basically, can't I? Yes.
Don't provoke me.
No, I literally can't do anything.
No magic word. Walk the walk.
Like I basically macroed out.
Beginning security data restoration. Considerable wait time ahead.
Mark all day. Who wants to go for a ride?
Upgrades finished up.
Don't waste my time.
So he can just grenade a lot of stuff.
Has been activated against me. Detecting another
That's a
suppression
full-on
zone.
behemoth, isn't it?
A man's gotta do what a man's gotta do. I'm a bad.
Yeah, probably Tychus is going to die.
It has no shields to defend me from these strikes. System
I should have
This is just
taken one less guy over, but okay.
defend me from these strikes.
Oh god.
Care to assist?
Just stay out of my way.
Must be an emergency. Please hasten. Standing by. Not a problem.
Okay.
I'm a bad man. You gonna fuck all
Your ally is fighting the enemy. For once.
How is my ally fighting the enemy? Oh yeah, the
it takes.
tower shoots. I
What's in it for me?
kind of forgot that.
You can't fix.
Tower attacks have temporarily disabled my systems.
Walk the walk. Okay, armchair general. A man's gotta do what a man's gotta do. What's in it for me?
Please tell me that Tychus is
I didn't hear.
properly getting down here.
Whatever it takes.
Wait, why was the time even
I'll have to ask for more.
moving while the tower was active?
Fix stupid. Don't waste
Can you actually distract the towers?
one step ahead. Whatever it takes. I didn't hear.
I have regained control of 50% of our systems, but it hasn't been easy. I recommend taking out that suppression
Yeah,
tower.
need to get the tower quickly.
I'm a bad man.
Your
I
ally's
am
forces
unable to progress due to the tower's interruption.
Walk the walk.
Yes,
This is
I
just
know.
a transport. It has no shields to
Yeah, I know that you are taking damage. Yes, I understand. Where the fuck is Nikara again? Like, how did I even leave her behind?
The tower has ceased its fire. At least something is going right. My work here is nearly finished, if you can believe it. Detecting another
Oh.
suppression tower.
Oh, third tower. Okay.
Whatever it takes. Walk the walk. A man's gotta do what a man's gotta do. I didn't hear no magic word.
Why am I even dodging that?
Suppression tower down.
It's not like I'm not out healing the damage.
Data secure. This security terminal is clear of corruption.
Go ahead. Huh? What's going on? Big job, huh? In the rear with the gear. Sure thing. Yeah, whatever.
Get me some more towers. Yes.
Yep. Move it. We'll butter my biscuits.
Oh, I don't really like the FK guy getting a free win, but what am I going to do? Like, I'm not going to lose on purpose.
Finalizing
Why the
to
fuck
final
is
terminal.
Nikara?
Try to stay
Ah.
focused.
God, I hate how dodgy the attack move command is on her.
Whatever it takes. Pack your bags and get on board.
Moving forward.
Like, how did you instantly lose that? Oh, come on.
Walk the walk.
More of our purifier tin are
Yeah.
being stored in this data core. Recover them if you can.
That was a terrible idea by me.
Whatever
Ah.
it takes.
I'm not losing main objective for
Man's gotta do what a man's gotta
that thing.
walk the walk.
Kinda happy right now that I didn't actually play on Bruto.
Word. Okay, armchair general. Can't fix. Whatever it takes.
Yeah, I know that Cyclones are shooting at me,
Walk the walk.
but they are not the real problem. I mean, they are now starting to become a problem.
Try to be patient.
But, oh god, oh fuck. How are the turrets doing? Still in progress?
I require aid. System defenses have been activated against me.
Stupid. Walk the walk.
So down here. Oh.
Enemy suppression
No,
tower
Sam. That's not how you're supposed to walk.
I didn't hear no magic word.
I need to get that suppression
unable
tower.
to progress due to the tower's
Ugh.
destruction. I am under attack. Care to assist?
The good thing that Tychus is such an easy character. Yeah. That's probably all I'm going to do up here. And then I'll def the wave. And then I'll come back up.
I am under attack. Care to assist?
Oh god, the Vikings won't land. Yeah, that's kinda bad, but also not, because they don't deal enough damage to ever really kill that thing, so shouldn't really matter.
Man's gotta do what a man's gotta do.
I hope so at least.
Word.
Oh god, that's a Yamato thingy, battle cruiser.
Walk the walk.
The tower has ceased its fire.
Yeah, probably going to restart Starcraft after this.
The enemy is targeting our data core. You must hurry.
Yeah, I'm not getting in that data core, no.
But it hasn't been easy.
Why would I even try? Come on. Aim something at Nikara. Or like this. Just don't do anything. Also works. There's one down here as well, right? I think there's one that spawns up here.
Multiple suppression towers are
Ha!
rendering
Got
attack.
it!
Intervention is necessary. The data core has been corrupted. There were no backups for the personalities within. Only 25% of the corruption remains. Tower attacks have temporarily disabled my systems. This is just a transport. It has no shield to defend
No.
from these
Why am I even dodging stuff? Like, the only character that actually needs to dodge stuff is Nikara.
Okay, armchair general. Fair enough. A man's gotta do what a man's gotta do. Walk the walk. Whatever it takes.
Nice.
Just hear me. Yep. Gotcha.
Some body bags.
Need some more of these. Yes. Okay, and that should be it. Okay. That was less terrible than I actually expected. Like, this actually worked. Did my OBS finally... did my Restream chat finally manage to connect to YouTube? No. Nice. So I guess I won't be able to read YouTube chat right now. Frick. Also, no one cares about the promotion channel on here, apparently. Meh. Okay. I got my 5th outlaw and my Odin. When do I actually get Rattlesnake? Okay, 1 more level. And then 2 more for Sirius. Okay. Now until where the first one's on the house, I'm not going on to Brutal. Like, that should be the point at which I swap. Like, I want 2 guys available. Oh no! Why did I fuck this up? Oh god, oh fuck. I should have restarted Starcraft. Oh no. Now I'm going to play another match without being able to see my workers. Nice.
One way or another.
The war against Amon rages, commanders. His forces descend upon the Zelnaga temple as we speak. It is yet to fall, but it will not last long. Your objective is to defend it until its activation.
So I think I need to do it this way.
We're running defense.
Oh no. We're running defense. I sure hope that he actually does something. So I actually want to start on Nikara. Like, why would I even want anyone else first? Like, I can't get the high damage guys right now. Or like the good high damage guys. Yeah, I could have totally done the fast expand thing. But I totally completely forgot that it exists. Well, those auto turrets cheaper ones. Probably not. Probably just my head playing games with me. So 2 turrets should probably clear out everything here. Getting all that stuff done. I should probably do the annoyed exhale less. Yeah, I'm not getting that thing pre-built, I think. But the pressure is slightly later on this map, so did I actually fuck this up? Okay. I'm not going to hit everyone, sadly.
What's in it for me?
Looks like we got an outlaw ready to join us.
Okay, armchair general.
Are vultures actually kiting back that much? Okay. Okay, we're getting a little bit of Hellbat support.
That isn't here, no magic.
I guess that's worth something. I should probably stay outside of bunker range. Let that thing tank.
Okay, armchair general.
Get my heal out pretty quick. Because I can't get anything else that's good.
Here we go. My Dragon laser drill's coming online. Oh, man.
Getting all of those things killed. Removing this. Getting this, and Gunslinger side out. Tiger should be at full health right now, yes.
Okay, armchair general. Whatever it takes.
Guess I can push this entire base pretty easily. Got that vultures actually go down with one grenade.
Marking location now.
Time to kill some ugly sons of whatever they are.
I'm a bat.
Our defenses are proving effective. Soon the temple will be
Oh,
ready.
is it just a single hybrid? Okay. I thought there was an attack wave with it. Apparently not.
This outlaw all out of steam.
My time.
But the barkeep picks that right up.
Okay, armchair general.
Yeah.
Whatever it takes. That isn't
No.
magic word.
How the fuck did I lose that one? Okay, got all of those. Can I actually build multiple medevacs already? No.
Get your head out of your six. A man's gotta do what a man's gotta do. You can't fix stupid.
Okay. So probably Sam again.
Not me. Walk the walk. Okay.
Like, I can't get serious right now, so probably
Amon is assailing the temple with a
at least Sam is the strongest. Yes. And apparently this one did work out perfectly.
Void Thrasher neutralized.
Think there's one more attack wave down here and then they come from up there.
We better send some body bags.
A man's gotta do what a man's gotta do.
But this is getting full cleared. The question is it getting full cleared right now? Because I'm not sure I can actually do that before, you know,
Your upgrade is complete.
I need to return to base.
A man's gotta do what a man's gotta do.
upgrade's been the temple's Zenithstones are reacting to our actions. I suggest demolishing them
Okay.
for safety's sake.
Wait, did I actually get the scanner thing before the actual important upgrade? Nice.
It took dozens of APM to build.
Come on. I'm not going to use the Odin for this.
Walk the walk.
Hybrid detected.
Good thing I brought the big guns. Ah! You scared me!
What, did I actually lose anything? No. Okay.
Don't waste my Don't provoke me.
Throw this one out there.
Your
Yeah.
ally is fighting the enemy. For once.
Okay, armchair.
Come on, how are you actually?
Walk the walk.
Boy, those tanks are unsieged.
That isn't here, no magic word.
What the fuck?
Whatever it takes.
Oh yeah, now they are sieged. Okay. I thought you just didn't know that you can siege tanks. Yeah, I'm probably going to push further down there because the hybrid might spawn there.
I had to tell you I'm bark all day. You can't fix stupid. Done. That isn't here, no magic word. A man's gotta do what
Your ally's base is under attack. Your ally has engaged the enemy.
you can't fix stupid. Okay, armchair general. Walk the walk. Whatever it takes.
Is it critical?
Upgrade is all done.
A man's gotta do what a man's gotta do. You can't fix stupid.
Yeah, probably shouldn't have shredded for that, but
Don't provoke me.
yeah, because the next attack wave might spawn in my face and then I'll regret it.
Okay, armchair.
Ah,
Your ally needs your help. It's that desperate.
Hybrid energy signature detecting.
that is easily going to clear it on its own. Yeah, okay. Let's get the bonus. This is for cleared.
A man's gotta do what
Your ally's forces
The
are
temple's preparations are proceeding as planned. Stay strong in your defense.
I'm probably going to drop the Odin down here. Just doing this.
Not a problem. Just relax. I'll take care of it. That's a serious outbreak. Must be an emergency. Standing by.
Now, honestly, Tychus can just push in further. He doesn't need to return, does he?
The temple is under siege from a void thrasher. Slay it before it deals too much damage.
Need some
Your
triage.
ally needs your help. It's that desperate.
Just relax.
hope this thing's in
Your conviction is admirable, commanders. We have 2 more Zenith stones to address.
for me.
Who wants to go for a ride?
Don't waste my time.
Your ally is fighting the enemy. For once.
Just stay out of my way.
Did the damage boost? Yeah, I think it actually this time hit
Your ally's fighting the enemy.
on the
for once.
correct timing to buff the bomb thingy.
Allies base under siege. We both know you need them.
That isn't here.
What is actually the... Oh yeah, there actually is one for
They
damage.
are in
Yeah,
for a
let's just
war.
push up. I just went with 2 on each cast, and oh god, I need to return. Okay.
Whatever it takes. Okay, armchair general. Walk the walk. You can't fix stupid. That isn't here, no magic word. A man's gotta do what a man's gotta do. Okay, armchair general.
Does stunning the medivac actually prevent it from unloading?
Whatever it takes.
Kinda interesting to know.
Your forces are just a little bit better.
Enemy drop pods incoming.
Yeah, the drop pods.
Walk the walk.
Yeah, probably going to
An upgrade's been completed.
stay here a little bit.
Your ally has engaged the enemy.
Enemy drop pods incoming.
What a man's gotta do.
What's What's going on, huh? I'm going.
Amon has summoned a Void Thrasher. It will severely harm the temple.
Oh, Void Thrasher is now on top. Yes, okay. That. Oh, I can actually get a fifth one. I somehow forgot that I unlocked that upgrade. I thought I was still stuck on 4. No, I totally got 2 upgrades. Yeah. Like, how the fuck did I forget that?
Your ally is fighting the enemy. For once.
Void Thrasher slain.
So let's full clear the space and then get the Zenith Stone.
We have eliminated all but one of the volatile Zenith stones.
I sense their fear. Whatever it takes.
New hybrid signature detected.
Well, let's go undetect them. Gotta do.
Your ally is fighting the enemy for once.
Is one even actually doing anything right now?
Magic word. All right. You can't fix stupid.
Your ally has engaged the enemy.
The walk.
I just don't want them to have any more CVs.
Yeah, General.
Come on.
No magic word. A man's gotta do.
Also, don't really want to get
Your
nuked.
allies' forces are under attack. I hope they're in front.
Odin's
The enemy
open
is
I've
attacking
never
your
been
base.
happier.
You.
Oh, where you been all my life? I'm listening.
Is it critical?
Your allies' forces are attacking.
Heavy duty.
What the fuck, Nikawa? Just move.
Where does it hurt?
Yeah,
Ooh, sounds standing.
totally getting flicked over by that wave, but
Heavy.
does it really matter?
Better send some body bags. You rang?
Enemy drop pods incoming.
You're 6. You gonna bark all day? What's in it for me? Walk the walk.
Okay. That seemed to work out, yes.
General.
Oh yeah, those things are actually detectors, aren't they? Why did I still not get Blaze?
Enemy drop pods incoming.
Allies' forces are under
The
attack.
Zenith stones have been destroyed. Regrettable, but necessary.
Well, that
Did I actually get my +3 weapons ever? No, okay.
you can't.
And I probably should get all the Blaze upgrades,
Enemy
yes.
drop pods incoming.
Okay, armchair general.
Go ahead.
Enemy drop pods incoming.
Time to lift to the corner and pray.
Okay.
Don't waste my time. Walk the walk.
Honestly, don't have as much minerals as I thought I would.
Bad man.
That's the bonus hybrid, does the Void Thrasher 2 in the bottom spawn right now? I think so?
Preparations are nearly complete, commanders.
I think the second one in the bottom spawns soon. I'll just get on here.
This is where they'll really try to screw us over, ain't it?
Several Void Thrashers are besieging the temple. They must be annihilated.
No, it's all the other spots. Nice. Oh, the thing that I lost was the medevac thing. Oh god. Like, I actually need that.
Well, butter my biscuit.
Like, that's literally an important tech building. Oh, not tech building. But important building in general.
Engage the enemy.
What's in it for me?
Oh god. I just doubled the amount of time I need to walk.
You can't fix stupid.
Huh.
You gonna bark
Yeah.
all day?
A Void Thrasher's death has been confirmed.
Don't wait.
Warning. Hybrid detected.
Hybrid. Damn, you really outdid yourselves. I'm going.
Thrasher down. Nice.
I didn't hear no magic word.
Your ally has engaged the enemy.
I'm going.
Why is everything ignoring me right now? What the fuck? Stay here, hybrids. The frick are you actually doing?
Pack your bags and get on board.
Hybrids? Hello? Okay, now I'm actually
Your
stealth.
allies fighting the enemy.
Now it actually makes now it actually makes sense.
Can't fix stupid. Okay, armchair general.
So second spawn bottom left didn't happen?
I didn't hear.
Is there even a second spawn bottom left? Or did I always just imagine that?
Walk the walk. A man. What's going on? Yep.
Better send some body bags.
Yeah, now it's the time to build
Your
turrets.
allies' base is getting knocked around. Your ally is fighting the enemy. For once.
Okay, armchair general.
Big dog is off the leash.
Is it critical?
Oh no, that side is actually taking way more damage than top side. What the fuck? Like he doesn't even actually have anything on top side.
That's a serious
But still it's better than his army.
Heavy duty.
Ooh, sounds serious.
Pew, 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 pew.
Now that's the commander I've been waiting on.
Yeah, okay. This is a totally boring stream and no one is actually watching me. Nice. Oh no, someone is actually watching me. And Twitch won't load the chat again. What the fuck? Come on. Like, I just want to see if the guy watching me is actually one of my friends or someone completely different. And community help. What the fuck are all of those? It might actually be a real user. Like, he doesn't seem to be a bot. Okay, got my rattlesnake, so I actually got something good to build first. Like, looking at how it goes, I might actually just do it on brutal, though that would probably massively increase the amount of people that just see that I'm level 4 and then leave. Yeah, I should probably just stay on hard. Why not? Any new Discord messages? No. Nothing is actually happening. Okay. Would be pretty fucking nice to have either someone in voice chat or in Twitch chat that I could actually interact with. Because I don't really know what to say except, you know, repeating what is happening on screen, but that isn't really that interesting, I think. Oh, more actual viewers.
This one will be better.
So, I can get the second SCV out without anything really happening.
Look, I need to get rid of this infestation before
Oh,
it spreads
that's
to
this
the rest
map.
of the planet. The infested come out at night, but they can't survive the daylight. Use that time to take out their structures.
I don't actually need to clear. Why? What? Why don't I learn from my mistakes? Why didn't I restart Starcraft again? Like, what the fuck? Yeah, now I can actually start with the muscles. What the fuck? Why is this bar so big? Okay, it shrunk down again. But what the fuck?
Big job, huh? Ben? What's that CV ready? Uh-huh. SCV ready. Huh?
Oh no, is he actually blocking us off? No, he's building a bunch of empty bunkers. It's the Manx. Okay. I just thought the barracks wasn't training anything, but it most definitely, yeah, it actually isn't, but you know, Manx.
What's going on? SCV ready.
Someone thought it was a rain or something.
Huh? Yeah.
Nope, that would be the third NG. That isn't actually a useful building.
Night's almost here. I'd start getting ready to deal with the infested if I were you.
Hear no magic word. Walk the walk.
Clearing out a little bit of the spot.
These Zerg don't know
Man's
enough
gotta do
bug
what a
off,
man's
do
gotta do.
they?
Whatever it takes. Okay, armchair.
Oh no, it's a choker. Nope. I need to retweet.
The sun is down. Defend against the infested until it rises again.
Come on, why does it have to be a choker? Is this actually saturated? I don't know. Let's just throw a lot more minerals onto it. Yeah. I expected this to happen. Am I actually outside of bunker range? Oh no. Is my Tychus just going to straight up die? Yes. Nice. Yeah, but it's not like I can just not step in. Because then that's going to happen. And that's also not really good. I need to get my second guy. Oh god, why? Why are you walking all your soldiers into their deaths? Like, why would you do that?
Okay, armchair general. You can't
Okay.
walk the. I'm a bad man. What's going on? Yo.
So it's Zerg, which slightly reduces the danger level of stealth units. So
I didn't hear
I'll-
no magic word.
I probably can justify getting Nux last.
You can't fix stupid.
And not instantly getting the anti-stealth thing. Yeah, the thing needs to die. Oh god, there's a second choker.
Go time.
Why? Why would there be a second choker?
You gonna bark all day? Don't provoke me.
Why am I actually doing this? This doesn't do anything. I'm just
The walk.
throwing out revitalizers.
Don't provoke me.
Yeah, this was sure to happen.
Don't waste my time.
Oh no, I am not getting
The night's
unchoked.
almost over. We'll be safe to move out again in the daytime.
Okay, I fucked this up majorly. Okay. Is this base actually saturated? I don't know. It might be.
Upgrades finished up.
Other gases? I think this one only had one worker. No, this looks like the bar's a different
To
size.
destroy enough structures today to stay ahead of the infestation. I've already marked a few for you.
What's in it?
Okay, and then I need to get Blaze.
Don't provoke me. Okay.
What the fuck, he's actually not moving. Why is he not moving? Does he even have units? Not really.
You can't fix stupid.
Sending you the coordinates for more structures.
A man's gotta do what a man's gotta do. Okay, armchair.
Is my camera zoom amount actually fricked? What the fuck? Is it graphics? Is there a special thing for camera distance? Or is something just weirding me out? I don't know.
You know, magic word.
Oh, didn't even know that thing was a detector. Oh yeah, yeah. That's that so, yes, okay.
What's in it for me? Whatever it takes.
Can he please actually build good units, maybe?
Walk the walk. That isn't
Or like, I don't know, do anything else except just straight up spamming bunkers.
Big dog is ready for a walk. Cloaked enemies are walking right behind our backs. Let's get some detection going.
Okay, this one's dead.
Whatever it takes.
God, this feels way too zoomed in, and I don't know why.
Another day's coming to an end. One of our barricades is being hit hard.
Why is one of our barricades being hit?
It looks like we've taken out a good
What the
amount of
fuck?
devastation. Just need to keep it up.
Oh, is that...
You can't fix stupid. That isn't here no magic word. A man's gotta do
Just keep fighting, commanders. We'll make it through the night.
the walk.
Come, I'm just going to destroy all of
Wanna do
this,
that at night, commanders?
and then we turn.
Infested will be here any minute. Incoming hunterlings. They're cliff jumpers, so watch out.
Whatever it takes. Okay, armchair general. You can't fix.
An upgrade's been completed.
A man's gotta do what a man's gotta do. Walk the
Spectre's here. Plant the terrazine.
Allies base needs your help.
don't provoke me. Walk the walk. That isn't here no magic word.
Which base is more fucked? No. None of them. Like, how is this actually holding? Like, the...
A man's gotta do what a man's
Okay, now I have a third welcome to the chat room. So, maybe I can actually read chat messages now.
Your allies' forces are attacking.
But might also just be a pipe dream. Okay.
I'm a bad man.
I don't know if my gases are full. I'm probably going to
Bark all day.
add another guy in there.
Provoke me. Whatever it takes. Walk the walk. Okay,
Your upgrade is complete.
bark all day. Don't provoke me.
Okay.
Reinforcements to the front line.
That isn't here no magic word.
Amon's supporting the infested with his own forces. It's gonna be a long night.
A man's gotta do. Okay, armchair general. Whatever it takes. That isn't here no magic word. Walk the walk.
Don't give up, commanders. This nightmare is about to end.
A man's gotta do what a man's gotta do. Okay.
Did I actually just get AoE stunned? Oh.
Walk the walk.
Your
Seem to
allies'
still work
forces
out,
are
so...
Allies base under siege. We both know you need them.
Walk the walk.
Sunrise. That's our cue to move. We won't have enough time later if we destroy too few structures today.
Probably just going to get Sam.
I've got another sector with structures on my scanners.
Oh yeah, my bombs aren't actually on E.
Upgrade complete. But at what cost?
You can't fit using a
This might take a few nights, and I don't like it.
man's gotta do what a man's gotta do.
Because he's not clearing out anything.
Yeah, General.
Like, he could at least use those artilleries to clear stuff out, but no.
I didn't hear no magic word. Walk the walk. Whatever it takes. A man's gotta do what a man's gotta do. Okay,
Looks like we can find additional structures here.
stupid.
Does he actually have anything except a few half-filled bunkers? One tank. Nice.
A man's gotta do what a man's gotta do. Let's get cooking. You can't fix.
Probably want the plus 50% damage for the next thing.
Don't go out too
Oh god, I'm not.
There isn't much time left in the day.
Oh god, I'm not even half topside fully cleared by night 3. This is actually terrible. Oh yeah, I should probably destroy this.
A man's gotta do what a man's gotta do. Walk the walk. I didn't hear no magic word. You can't.
This all needs to be cleared.
The station was bad. This is crazy. Hold them off. Don't get too bold out there. If our base falls to the infested, this planet will be lost. There's a viral phage out there, commanders. Kill it if you can, but you'll have to do it at night. Don't worry if you can't kill the viral phage tonight. I'm sure it'll be back tomorrow.
Whatever it takes.
Yeah, getting the viral phage.
Army under attack. Stim to win.
All right. One step ahead. What's in it for me?
Like the hustle, but I'd advise against it, commanders. It'll be
Yeah,
easier to take
getting
out
that
the
viral
structures in the
phage.
daytime. We've got a barricade taking some damage here. I'm seeing the infested gather at one of the barricades.
Please tell me he's actually able to hold that. Come on. Does he have any upgraded weapons? Doesn't look like
Worry
it.
about the viral phage after we clear out the structures.
Your ally have engaged the enemy. The enemy is all over your SCV.
Nope. Nope, fuck off. This is not going to happen.
Allies base need your help.
This is not going to happen at all.
I'm a bad man. I didn't hear no magic word.
I mean, at least topside is full cleared. So that's a plus.
Okay, armchair general. My goose is getting cooked. A man's gotta do what a man's gotta do.
But this is like too many structures left.
You gonna bark on
And we're getting stanks and shit.
hear no magic word.
Though
Takes. I'm a
this will be very annoying.
That tank is strong enough to withstand sunlight. We have to kill it ourselves. You sure you want to do that at night, commanders? The infested will be here any minute.
Why the fuck is this thing just running straight through our base?
Are you kidding me? Amon wants to attack us now too? Perfect.
The enemy is attacking your base.
Come on! Like, the only thing he does is defend, and he can't
Enemy's
even
attacking
get
your
that
allied
done.
base. Better than hitting yours.
What the fuck, my dude?
Keep it up. Night's
Oh.
Say the word, baby. Sure. Why not?
There,
Sure thing.
there's a whole ass drop about to go down in our base. Oh no. That one actually managed to get cleared out in time. Nice.
We're not done yet, commanders. Here's some more structures to burn out.
armchair general.
Wait, did I actually not hit the structures on bottom? Okay. I'm pretty sure I got them, but... Okay. I'm just pushing up this side. Come on, Blaze. Just hit stuff. Like, hit stuff that's
About
drenched.
half of the infestation has been cleared out. Don't give up.
Damn, soon I'll have all the upgrades. So I can help out our defense guy. Okay. What the fuck is that? That an overseer? Like, there's an enemy structure inside of our base. Yeah, that's probably an overseer. And that's not a structure. Wait. Oh yeah, this has an automatic sensor tower. I almost was like, where does he have the sensor tower from? But yeah. I still have fucking 60 structures left. Might actually be 2 more nights. Like, how am I actually supposed to get this done?
People of the Dominion, rise up and defend yourselves.
We're in for a rough night, but I know we can survive it.
In the rear with the gear. Bad news?
Allies base under siege. We both know you need them.
Yeah, whatever.
What's in it for me?
Forces under attack. The boys are next.
Walk the walk.
Don't get too bold out there. If our base falls to the infested, this planet will be lost.
No, nothing on that side is actually getting done. So that's nice.
Your army is under attack.
Pack your bags and get on.
God, why do I have to defend two sides, even though the other guy is actually not doing anything except defend? Like, what the fuck? Yeah, come on, build units. Okay, that thing is dead. Bam. Okay. There's actually bunkers here now. So I might actually spend the rest of the night outside. Hey kitty, you're gonna spend the night? Yeah. Okay, getting down there would be the next priority.
Your allies base is under attack.
Because I feel like his death is actually not completely terrible. Like, it might hold something.
Your ally is enemies
Looks like Amon wants a piece of us too. Get those defenses in place.
your forces.
Oh god, why is there so much stuff blinking?
Attacking your SCVs.
No, it seems to work out.
Allies base need your help.
Like the hustle, but I advise against it, commanders. It'll
Everything is blowing up.
structures in the daytime.
Nice.
This may look bad, but it won't last much longer. Morning's almost here.
Can he actually kill the Zerg drops?
Stop them.
Go time.
Ah,
Alright. Get on the ship, you numbskulls.
I think he got the dropships.
Your allies base is
I
Get to
somehow
work,
lost
Commanders. We have
Blaze.
to burn enough
Okay.
of the infestation today so that we don't fall behind.
Bad news? Yep. We'll butter my biscuit. We hear you.
Okay.
Walk the walk.
Please tell me this actually is the last day. I need to clear this.
It takes. That isn't here, no.
Like, I think those were cleared by the bombs.
Okay, armchair general.
When
I
I'm done
sure
here, Commanders,
fucking hope
here's
so.
some more structures to burn out.
Do multiple Psystorms, or however this is called, stack? Ultrasonic pulses? Probably, maybe. Or at least the initial damage. And
The infestation is almost gone. But we
does
need
this
to get
even
the rest
deal
of the
initial
base
damage?
burnt.
I don't know. Like, I think it does. So,
Gotta do. Walk the walk.
kinda looks like it does. Like, enemies are instantly dying when it comes down. So it, or at least it does one instant tick.
That isn't here, no magic word.
Detecting more structures at this location.
Wait, did I actually not clear out the entire top side? What?
You can't fix stupid. Okay, armchair general. That isn't here, no magic word. Whatever it takes. Walk the walk.
Oh yeah, I totally left that one island up there, yeah.
You can't fix stupid. Okay, armchair general. A man's gotta do what a man's gotta do.
Okay.
Whatever it takes.
Time is
This
running out. Don't forget that our
is
base will need to be defended at night.
going semi-well,
You can't fix
I would say.
Alright, get on the ship, you numbskull.
Don't provoke me.
Like if he actually
What's going on? What's in it?
got the long range update and
Walk the walk.
cleared something out, this
Sit
will
tight, Commanders.
go
This
way
one's just getting
better.
started.
Oh god, why is everything exploding this much?
All day.
Probably due to...
Stupid.
Is this a Dominator? No, that was just a Destroyer, or however they're called, wasn't it?
Just stay out of my way. Don't waste my time.
Yeah.
You gonna
Everything's going to die now, which is kinda bad.
okay, armchair.
That's the last of it.
But also the AoE explosions worked out. Mission cleared. Oh god. I kinda want to look at that replay. Like, what did he actually do? Like, how much gas was he even floating? Wait, does he even ever be... Okay, I can't even see his SCV count.
Empire's right behind me.
Yeah, but now he
If you can't leave it, love it.
got the fuck ton of soldiers out.
The home front now. We're
Yeah,
if you can't leave
starts to float some more minerals,
my
Kill me a lot of Zerg at my time.
Choker.
but I don't know what what he would actually spend them on.
Empire's right behind me.
Does he like use his top bar abilities like ever?
Our troopers are only as strong as their weapons. It's time to...
Oh yeah, weapons! How the fuck did I forget the weapons?
This is the
Yeah, that's why he's floating so much minerals, okay.
my dominion, right or wrong. If you can't leave it, love it.
Our allies have been
Empire's right
attacked.
behind me. My dominion,
The night's almost
right
over.
or wrong.
Base is under attack.
We're the higher authority.
Okay, commanders. We need to...
If you can't leave it, love it.
Our allies
My
are being
dominion,
attacked.
right or wrong.
Sending you the coordinates.
We're the higher authority. Empire,
Contaminated strike online.
my dominion, right or wrong.
Radioactive shrapnel.
Our allies are being upgrade complete.
Detecting
Our
more structures.
allies are being attacked.
Cloaked enemies are walking right.
What is... Where's he building a nuke?
All right. It looks like...
Oh, he's getting a Ghost Academy,
Keep
okay.
fighting. You sure you want to do that?
Yeah, of course, that one builds an automatic nuke.
Our allies
Does that one fill up to 100 without ever getting used?
The Dominion stands behind me.
Yep.
All emergency
And he
powers
doesn't even have a 100 ability, so there's no reason for this.
allies are being attacked.
We'll just stay at 100 for the entire rest of the game. I somehow forgot that the Seeking King thing isn't actually faster than just watching it at a higher speed, so that's fun. Guess, yeah, it stays at 100. Nice. Really fucking nice.
Upgrade complete.
This war
Yeah.
We're in for it.
No, that's the hit point pass button.
Is under attack. Our
Yeah,
allies
quit replay. Oh. Going to the toilet real quick. So I'm back, and did I even get a level up? Yes. What does this like? Oh yeah, that is an important upgrade. Nice. Yeah, definitely 2 more levels before I'm going on brutal. Although on brutal my teammates might actually be better, so why not? Yeah, and probably I'm actually finding stuff quicker. Oh no, cancel. Restarting Starcraft so I can see my worker count. That seems important, yes. Almost forgot it again. Like, I should probably get that bug. Get rid of that bug. Because that is going to fuck me over. So, Starcraft should be back on screen in a few seconds. Yes. Sadly, no one wants to join in on Discord. I'm pretty sure I'm on EU right now. Yes, Americas. So maybe someone... This may be the one viewer that I have willing to maybe join and be less terrible than randoms. I don't even know which of these is an actual viewer and which is just... I think it's electrical longboard. Yeah, this one definitely is a bot. And these two are like perma watcher bot thingies. If I remember correctly, yeah. Am I now actually not finding a match? Come on. Like, is no one actually playing Brutal? What the fuck? Oh, it's Clara. Hi. Did I actually... Oh, and Patrick. This Flask doesn't even directly translate to Flasher. Flasher. Come on. Like, how do you fuck this up? Please tell me. Oh. Actually found something. Oh god, it's another Mangsk. But this one might actually be a good Mangsk. Oh, but it's minor evacuation. And stuff can get... go downhill really, really fast. On this map. Hey, I'm now on 4 viewers, at least in theory. So that's nice. Okay, good that we are still talking about charity. Very serious actual charity, yes. Why did I move him out way too early? I don't know. Patrick, do you have, do you still have Starcraft? No, you might actually be worse than the randoms. Like, I should not ask you. The bottle initiative, yes, yes. I think I need to get double gas anyway. Pre-7, so, why not instantly build it? Oh yes, I can see my worker count again. That's so nice. What is Mr. Random actually doing? Oh no. He's physically building a bunker down there. This doesn't seem good. This doesn't seem very correct at all. Can I actually get on 2,000 minerals if I skip my NG for now? God, it's so weird to have my high costs. And that slightly high ping. Yeah. Yeah, Patrick, it is. Nah, I'm not getting to 1,000 gas on the same minerals on my Tiger's timing, I think.
Allies base need your help.
It's about damn time.
Come on.
Don't waste my time.
I need those minerals pretty bad. I want rattlesnake.
What's in it for me? You gonna bark all day? A man's gotta do what a man.
There's Cav West.
Okay.
Commanders, one of my pilots is getting antsy. I think he might try to...
Okay, so this is our first launch. That's nice. But I don't like the looks of that guy. Like, he doesn't look like a great player from what I have seen of him until now. Shouldn't, like, infested spawn any minute now? Please don't tell me you put some SCVs in the bunker. No, okay.
What's in it for me?
No? No, apparently...
The ship's trying to launch without you. They can't get off.
Oh, on the 2-minute mark, they actually start to spawn, okay. How did I not know that? Like, that sounds like a basic fact that I should probably know. This is, yeah, this is a composition with a ghost. Okay. Okay, so he actually also dropped a bunker. But why didn't he do that earlier? Like, that's how you play this character. Drop the bunker, get the soldiers out, convert them to workers. Like, that speeds up the economy so freaking much. Is this yeah, that thing is actually affected by AoE damage. Should probably get the Marines down first.
Better than hitting yours, I guess.
Company's coming to our base, and they do not look too happy.
And now he's getting Bane busted. Nice. No, I can't actually one-shot those. And I don't have my gunner thing. Even though Blaze is probably the right choice of third guy here anyway. Yeah, I should probably def this one first before, you know, pushing out further.
Upgrade complete, but at what cost?
Why am I actually building down onto my ally space? What the fuck am I doing here? Yeah, I probably want to... Do I want to evacuate this first or clear the base first? I don't know what's actually the right play.
That enemy attack is on its way. Intercept
Yeah.
it before it reaches the ship.
This is cleared up. What the fuck? How did I never notice those things before? Come on. The subtitles on Twitch are what? Work of art. Okay.
Your ally needs your help.
So I need this and this on a hotkey. What? Oh yeah, I was just about to ask why is he pushing that way. Then I remembered you can't actually control the summoned Zerg. Like, it would be weird if you could actually control your units that are directed via mind control, you know? Like, why would you be able to do that? Okay. Now I can one-shot those things. I'll start this evacuation right now. We have all the bunkers in place and we need to get through this quick.
It won't be long before the noise draws the infested to your location.
Don't waste my time. You can't.
Odin's up, and I've never been happier.
Don't provoke me.
Oh, getting that big red button. Is it? It'll probably destroy that tanker truck. I think it can get infested and be pretty annoying. Yeah, I should probably work on the base defense up there, shouldn't I? Because, like, everything from bottom can probably deal with. No, apparently he can deal with everything at the current point in time. Like, why do they like the shock division so much? It isn't even...
Your SCVs will be DED if you don't stop them. Your allies' base is under attack.
Okay, So he salvaged all that. While in firing range of an Nidus worm. Okay. Like, at least he knows how to salvage, but that was not the correct point in time to salvage.
SCVs are under attack. It's a disaster.
Yeah, I should... I don't even know what side I need to def, like... He has 2 times.
Keep it up, and we'll get everyone safely evacuated.
Okay.
Time to do some outlaw recruiting.
Probably
Not sure if you want to deal with Blightbringer, but
get those 2 things down there to save some time. No, you don't actually need to repair that SCV. It's not going to really die anytime soon. Okay, please don't quick start stuff while I'm on the way to the bonus objective. Oh no, those are flying. I can't actually unveil them with oil spells. Ah. Also, I think those were Bane mines. This is a good position to be in for defending that warp, isn't it? No. No, it actually isn't. Yeah, I actually need to be there. Why do I even bother? Like, he has enough stuff to defend.
Your ally is fighting the enemy.
So I think the timer doesn't go down while that thing is in combat. If I remember correctly, yes. So, yeah. Got him. Okay. So let's go with that ship. Next. One, two, three. That's 2. That's 2 more. I think I still have too many in my main base, don't I? Nah. Yeah, could have totally transferred them.
Your ally needs your help. It's that desperate.
Those eradicators are out of control.
Yeah.
Could be dangerous. If you
No, he actually doesn't have any Hilma.
Incoming enemy attack. They're headed for one of the ships.
Knock on. It's going to be attacked now anyway. Why the fuck do I even care? It's not like I can't defend this. And this was an actual misplay, like getting my +1 and stuff so late, and my, you know, +2 and +3. No, my +1 wasn't even late. Only my +3. But still. Wait. He does have the drop pod thing, but he doesn't know how to rally it into a bunker. Okay. Kinda weird.
You have to stop that enemy attack, commanders. They'll kill everyone on that ship.
What? That was not worth a nuclear annihilation. Like, he could have just used, you know, Ultralist or something. That would have at least pushed out. But hey, at least the explosions look fancy. So, that's something.
Allied base needs your help.
Fight our opponents in the field, or we'll be fighting them at home.
Spectre's here.
Evacuation efforts are going well.
Okay. This going kinda well. Should have probably gone for area, but or radius. But
You can't attack the eradicators after they're back in the facility. Hurry up if you want to destroy
yeah,
them.
Nexus Eradicators.
Together we can destroy
Enemies
any
attacking your
foe.
allies. Allies' forces are under attack. I hope they're in front.
Wait, what? Ooh, he actually dropped Zerg down here.
Better than hitting yours.
Nice.
Your ally is fighting the enemy. For once.
A man's gotta do what a man's gotta do. Walk the walk.
That was a quick
Your
bonus
allies' forces
objective.
are attacking.
You busted up the eradicators. Damn thing.
And there was a single ghost being dropped. Okay. What the fuck?
Your ally has engaged the enemy. Your ally needs your help. It's that desperate.
Whatever it takes. A man's gotta do.
How many ships do we actually need?
Your ally's
5?
fighting the enemy for once.
Why does that Zerg thing actually automatically spam pings? Like, who decided that that would be a good idea? Come on, build your bunkers. Quick, build your bunk.
That ship and all of its passengers are in your
I think he just...
A man's gotta
Did he
do
just
what a
speed build? No,
You
he
can't
doesn't.
fix stupid.
But yeah, he should totally speed build those.
Hear no magic word. Okay, armchair general.
Contaminated strike initiated.
A man's
Why?
gotta do what a man's gotta do. You can't fix.
Like, yeah, it's a nice contaminated strike, but why?
Walk the
Like, now it would be useful, maybe.
A man's gotta do what a man's gotta do. You can't fix stupid.
Yeah, I should probably get all my upgrades.
Well, that's one fewer disaster to worry about. Thank you, commanders. Hopefully, Amon will think twice before trying that again, but I doubt it.
The enemy engaged your
Like, why does he... Why? Oh no, he has 2 medivacs. Okay, I thought he would only have 1.
attacking.
Unleash.
I think I accidentally shot an Ultralisk. Shouldn't be that bad. Kostige Partei in das Erd... Yeah, maybe you should, you know,
Evacuation in progress.
put in subtitles in the correct language. That would work like way better.
Oh, where you been all my life? Lot of love. It's about to get
Yeah, just speeding
Your allies
everything up
fighting the
with
enemy
this.
for once.
Is he actually pushing there or what's going... What the... I'm not going to ask what that was.
all about that.
I'm just starting this one so that I can get out of this mission. But seems to be going reasonably well.
That's almost everyone. Got a few more to evacuate, and then we can all get out of here.
Enemy attacks on the way to our base. I don't like this one bit.
God, having multiple medivacs would be really, really nice right now.
Okay,
But,
general.
Your ally needs your help.
Irradiate the very
these are units that he could use, you know? What the fuck? Why are there just units sitting around?
Word. Oh, yeah, baby. Don't provoke me.
Oh, I actually didn't have any charges, that's why nothing
Man's
happened.
gotta do what a man's gotta do.
Pack your bags and get on
Your
board.
allies' base is under attack.
That actually makes sense.
A man's gotta do what a man's gotta do.
We don't really need all those contaminated strikes, but okay.
You can't fix stupid.
Please don't fuck this up, my dude.
Okay.
Your allies' base is getting knocked around.
Can you actually defend this? Oh, yeah. Kinda looks functional.
Whatever it takes.
Okay.
To hear no magic word. Walk the walk.
This thing...
Do what a man's gotta do.
All right, that's
Hey, and that's a win.
Thank you, commanders, for everything.
Now that's the commander I've been waiting for.
Okay. Looks like I can actually Nah, I didn't even really carry that one. I mean, he did stuff. He probably didn't do the optimal stuff, but he did stuff. And just one more mission and the first one's on the house. So that will be nice, yeah. He actually killed more stuff than me. Probably because the bunkers have more range than me, but yeah. First thing you see when you join the chat. Totalitarian Regime 2020. Okay. What the fuck? Okay, it's the barriers. Yeah, that will probably work out. Like, minor evacuation is probably my mission with the highest failure rate. Or maybe some of the ones where you need to get the objective super quick. Probably going to do the mutation on hard as soon as I get my level 7.
Another game of Starcraft.
I don't need... No, I can't just... cannon rush... Not cannon rush, turret rush on this map, I think. No? Yep.
I can take them down.
So...
Own prototype mech, the Balius. Gather pods so that we can activate it, and be quick about it.
And there's that woman that somehow looks like Trump talking again. Like, I could actually just go with a turret. So I think I don't need a double gas, so I might get my rattlesnake out quicker this way. I just need one filled out gas. I have seen worse chats, much worse. Proceeds to have trauma for like I guess.
We're getting down to the wire. Make every minute count.
Oh. But somehow my viewer count seems stable, even though no one is really talking in chat. Except Patrick. But he doesn't count. Nothing personal, you just don't count. So, am I actually getting my rattlesnake on time? Oh, not really. But slightly quicker than before. So that's definitely a thing I should continue doing. I should not continue doing because, you know, getting the first ones on the house pretty soon. And then I don't really... Like, I can then do the conventional tactics. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay.
Incoming enemy strike force. Be ready.
Tyranny, stupid. Ain't no enemy like the one you know.
Bam, bam.
Don't provoke me.
You have instant cannons. You can defend this. Please defend this. How do I... No, I actually need to turn around, okay? What? Oh no, he totally is Phoenix. Wait, he totally is Phoenix. He can just wipe an attack wave instantly. Like, why would I need to come back to defend? I mean, yeah, I kind of pushed the wrong base, but still.
This damn alien is about to murder us all. Get moving.
I'm going. Don't provoke me. Got it. Whatever it takes. I didn't hear no magic word.
Yeah, And I should
Your
probably
ally has engaged the enemy.
start transferring stuff over here.
Gonna bark all day. I didn't hear no magic word.
Deploying onto the front line.
Yeah, General. You can't.
Ah, you can count. Okay.
The Valiant
Yes,
is
yes.
halfway online.
You can totally count.
Keep it up.
Walk the walk.
Yeah. Getting all of these done.
What's in it for me?
Oh, there's some down here, I think, that I forgot. No? No. There actually aren't. I somehow thought there were things down there.
So the enemy seeks to attack our base. They will regret it.
Getting 4 more workers up there. I'm not going to help you, Death. Sorry. Like, I need to clear stuff out right now.
Whatever it takes.
Like, you're Phoenix. You're a strong, independent
Fighting
Protoss.
the enemy. For once.
Walk the walk. Whatever it I'm a bad man.
You are efficient, aren't you? We're set for
Yes, totally
hunts now.
efficient.
Evaluating pre-launch
Definitely.
diagnostics. This will only take a bit.
Did I actually get... No. How did I forget this? Yeah, I need to
I've never
keep...
seen anything like Mobius Core. We're ruining their facility, and they're still trying to
Okay, the
stop
train,
Mobius
the train, the
track.
train, the train. The
You'll
train
find
seems
them on a
doable.
train running across
Probably
the
should get a
research
crooked
area.
Sam, because he can
Keep
just
none
burst down
alive.
trains. Even though he doesn't have 3 charges right now. So, might be kinda hard for him to do.
Ready for action. I'm approaching the hybrid's containment cell.
What's in it for me? You can't fix, stupid. Whatever it takes.
And he kinda needs his double damage upgrade to make this really count. But hey,
Don't waste
it's still pretty okay damage.
whatever it takes.
Like, this thing is going down really quick.
Excellent.
Bam.
The train is wrecked, and Mobius will never get what was on it.
Okay, so I should probably not have stopped building workers for whatever reason.
The containment cell. Hybrid target acquired.
So, what abilities does the hybrid actually have? Okay. Splitting isn't really an ability. I mean, he always splits, doesn't he?
Hostile forces are zeroing in on our
I
base.
think he always
Keep
splits.
your eyes peeled.
Our victory came at a price, Commanders. The Valius is going to need more work. The pressure's on. We have just a few
So
moments
I have
left
that
to kill
stuff.
this hybrid bastard.
Will he be using Phoenix to actually burst that stuff down?
Gather some more
No.
parts for
He's
it.
protecting the enemy from AoE damage.
Valius's
Nice.
victory is imminent. Move, move,
Cool.
move.
You can't fix, stupid.
I should probably get this thing so I can destroy some high value targets. Come on, the stealth field isn't worth. Get something that deals damage, please.
No magic word. Walk the walk.
Solarite Dragoon operational.
Like, he's Terran, he can just spam scan.
It's the upgrade's finished up.
The enemy is using cloaked units. They cannot hide from our detectors.
Whatever it takes.
Please tell me he has detectors, because I totally don't. Like, he does have an Arbiter suit. Doesn't that detect? Oh no, it needs an upgrade to detect. Oh, I also have Sirius, and I should have totally built him way earlier.
We've passed the halfway point. The Balius is coming together.
Okay, armchair general. That isn't here. You gonna bark all day?
Yeah, not going to dodge that armor-piercing missile. Also, I apparently haven't built my medevac bay yet. Oh, yes, I didn't have enough money. Can't target invulnerable units. What did I actually just try to target? Like, I thought I targeted the ground. I mean, the ground is pretty invulnerable, but it's also not a unit.
Don't waste my time. That isn't here no magic word.
So yeah, getting this for all that anti-air damage.
Construction material needs have been met. Your cooperation is appreciated. I'm making the final preparations for the Balius's deployment. Expect to see me out there soon.
Getting all that bonus time right now.
And they do not look too happy.
Man's gotta do what a man's gotta
But losing on time seems pretty unlikely now. That stuff actually gets cleared out pretty fast.
do. The walk.
The arbiters fly again.
Where the fuck are my units? Can you please not just...
Another train will pass us soon.
Grunt is an absolute unit. Nice.
Everyone
Can
on
you
this
just
train
not teleport away my units, maybe? Like, why would you do that? Like, I might actually need them.
This is General Davis reporting in. The Balius is en route to its target.
Sure, why not? Not a problem.
So, 4 more of those.
No magic word. A man's gotta do what a man's gotta do.
Allies' forces are under attack. I hope they're in front.
Getting my Nux.
Is here.
This is working.
That's right. We'll stamp out every last one of these traitors.
Should probably get the Vitalizer attack speed. Oh, Secret Stash actually. I thought that was his final upgrade, but it totally isn't. I can just out-heal this. Like, I totally do not care about this.
Target down. Now I need to get the Balius back in fighting shape.
Okay, so getting that secret stash.
At our base. Let's make
Ooh, did I actually not put the fixer safe house on my hotkey? Okay.
Your ally has engaged the enemy.
I'm afraid the Balius requires additional parts after
No, that seems to be going pretty well. That Banshee should be dead.
Upgrade is all done. Your allies fighting
No, not
enemy
really,
at once.
but now.
Understood.
Whatever it takes.
Come on, you can push somewhere else. I don't really need to be babysitted. Okay.
You gonna bark all day?
Did I just hit the... no. I don't know what I hit. I probably hit the 2-hour thing, but it didn't do anything, so...
That desperate.
Don't waste my time. You can't fix stupid.
Lost that mojo pretty well.
Walk the walk.
we have half of the Balius parts now.
Yeah, should totally move over there.
Don't provoke me.
Like, should probably just do this one. Oh, I could have just gone down there, I think. That would actually be a smart decision.
Man's gotta do.
But no, I somehow forgot that.
Whatever it takes. You can't fix stupid.
I got you.
What the fuck? Why did that? That was pretty delayed, okay. But yeah, I guess that's what happens when you play on the American server. Oh yeah, why was I even asking Patrick to join? I don't think he has anything well leveled on the American server. And an unleveled Patrick is definitely worse than randoms.
I hope they're in front.
Well, would you look at that? We
Okay.
have pods for launch. Combat systems are up and running. Safety tests still pending, so be patient.
You engage the enemy. On purpose?
A man's gotta do what a man's gotta do. I didn't hear no.
Can I actually get down there in time?
Your
Not
allies'
really.
forces are attacking.
But why? He could have just pulse spammed. Like, that's what you do with attack waves. You're Phoenix. Oh, and he still doesn't have any detection. Nice.
Walk the walk. I didn't hear no magic word.
Yeah, that's an American server. Of course.
Okay, what's in it for me?
Why would there not be an American server?
Walk the walk. A man's gotta do what a man's gotta do.
The enemy will fear my blades.
Hybrid cell identified. The Balius is headed to it.
Yeah, I might actually now get killed by the armor piercing thingy. But it's only Tychus and he can instant respawn, so I don't really care that much. Like, yeah, would be nice if he didn't die. I can instantly respawn him with the Odin, so meh. Okay, Nux dying is a little bit worse.
Forces are under attack. I hope they're in front.
Don't waste my time. Whatever it takes.
Why would you clear out the right side? There's absolutely no reason. Like, why would there not be an American Starcraft server?
Whatever it takes.
Like, why would Starcraft not have an American server?
Whatever it takes. I'm a bad man.
What you talking about?
Hey, armchair general.
Like, do you think Americans don't
Containment cell down.
play Starcraft? Question mark.
You ain't gotta tell me twice.
Yep. Totally stayed in the stasis field. Yeah. Going to go to the toilet right now because this should be basically automatically won.
Enemy attacks on the way to our base. I don't like this one bit.
Another story for Joey Reyes.
It actually worked this time.
And did I win? Yes. Nice. One server for Hooray Communist. What? Ah, one server for all, you mean? Not for exclamation mark? I don't think that makes sense. Yeah. Yeah. Like, do you want to have a ping of, like, 200? Okay, I'm now going to do the mutation on hard. I could probably just do it on brutal, why not? Nah. Seems kinda like a thing that would make people rage quit. To have a non-leveled guy in that mutation. Nah, I should probably wait till I'm 15. But honestly, nah, I'll just play normals. If I don't have anyone who wants to join in, but apparently my Twitch chat is kinda empty. Oh, yeah, I also just now lost one viewer. Maybe due to Clara now counting us offline? I don't know. Did I get any YouTube messages? No, you can't actually do Brutal Plus on public queue without a maxed out character. You can't actually matchmake for that. Okay, it's a level 4 Eloak, but he might be kinda good. Maybe. Like, or to phrase it better, he might be not bad, and then but it's still an Eloak without a sentence, so
Thank the gods you are here, commanders. We do not have much time before Amon assails this temple. Its activation has begun, but it needs more time to be completed.
so I actually need to open with my NG now.
This ground is now mine. The enemy will not have it.
So I should probably start walking right now. I'm totally going to speed clear those rocks. At least I think that's how that's the fastest way to clear them. I'm not actually sure. It might not actually be. Yeah, you should totally shoot down there, please. Thanks. Yeah, I still fucked a lot of things up, I think. I think I need the gas way earlier. But hey, seems to kinda work. Like I can do the command center pretty soon. I have 2 idle workers, oh yeah. Because one is going to build the command center pretty soon.
Don't provoke me. What's in it for me?
Yeah. I'm not going for the quick outlaw, I'm just going for the quick expansion. I think that's better, especially on this map. Though I can now get a whole lot of minerals and probably get the speed outlaw as well. Maybe.
Man's gotta do what a man's gotta do. Walk the walk.
Ah, sadly, those are not killed by a single nade.
Rattlesnake on the job.
And I could have started with not rattlesnake, but Sirius again, and I forgot it again. But I'll get Sirius second, I think.
Don't provoke me.
And I probably forgot my SCVs for way too long time. Probably going to get out of tower range. Putting the old Rattler in front of Tychus. Second base is done.
All day. I'm a bad man.
Oh, Rattlesnake's anti-building damage is just so strong. One of the other workers can just go down here. Why is this not in my queue? I don't know. But it totally should be.
Forces under attack. The boys are
Need to get this, need to get this. Actually need to get this in the other order.
Warning. Hybrid detected.
Oh, you didn't
Yeah,
tell
there's
me
a
your mama
destroyer,
was coming.
yes.
Bark all day.
Excellent. The temple's mechanisms are aligning properly. It will soon be ready for activation.
So I'm on 12, 13, 14, 15, 1, 2, 1, 2.
Get your head out of your six.
So I
Ally has engaged the enemy.
think this will actually work out. Yeah, I'm losing Tychus right now. Doesn't even matter that much. I mean, it's kind of bad, but not really.
Don't provoke me. That isn't here no magic word. Whatever it takes. Walk the walk.
Alright.
Should totally lift Tychus in.
All day. Okay, armchair general.
Tychus, stop being stealthed. I kinda need you to tank. Okay, so this is going to happen.
Amon is assailing the temple with a
Yep,
Void
this is working out perfectly.
A man's gotta do what
I don't think I need to actively dodge right now, so
I'm a bad man.
might get the full clear depending on how well he defends. Does he have units?
Get your head out of your
Oh god, he has vanguards, I think they are called.
okay,
Like, those are units, but those are not good units.
magic word.
Even my structures put up more of a fight than you.
A man's gotta do
What was the 7 for? Oh yeah, I totally needed to get one more worker.
waste my time.
Like, one did not...
Your upgrade is
Like, why are you down here with me? Come on, don't. I just need to get that one drone in the corner, and then I'm up.
The Zeniths
Yeah, there isn't a drone, okay.
become unstable. It may be wise to dispose of them.
your base. The enemy is all over.
Why am I defending my allies' base before my own? This is not actually that smart.
Your allies' forces
Yeah.
are attacking.
Lost my research building. Nice.
The enemy is attacking your SCV.
Hybrid detected. Marking location now.
Did I lose anything else? One SCV.
World of pain. Bark all day.
But I got my full clear, so that's something. Oh no, I actually lost 2 SCVs because I also lost my building SCV.
I'm a bad man.
Like, I can respawn him with this. Should totally get the doubled healing.
Your army is under attack.
And destroy these cowards. Oh, it's on.
Did you actually manage to kill the stuff up there? No. This kind of looks bad. Oh, no,
The enemy's
it doesn't.
attacking your allies' base. Better than hitting yours, I guess.
You have really good detectors. Why don't you build them? Come on.
Base under attack. Time to lift to the corner and pray.
I should have gone to the bot. What the fuck?
Your allies' base is under attack.
Oh god, oh fuck. I should have just stayed down. Like, I could have probably defended this. Not like this.
Engage the enemy. Your upgrade is complete.
Fuck. But what? Oh yeah, only one is down because I only have 2 guys.
New hybrid signature detected.
Time to kill some ugly
Okay.
Junge. Whatever they
He just gets bursted down instantly.
Army under attack. Stim to win.
Half of the temple's configurations are complete.
Yeah, but I fucked that up so bad. I need to get my stuff back real
Allies'
quick.
forces are under attack. I hope they're in front.
And then I need to get my SCVs back.
Reaper man's coming knocking. Sure. First round's on me.
A Void Thrasher is bombarding the temple. You must end its assault.
This could have gone way better than it actually did. I need to go down there, but I don't have a tiger. Okay, now I have a tiger. And having a tiger is pretty important for clearing
Your ally
out
is
stuff.
for once.
Yeah, I'll need to get that Void Thrasher. I think he can death, maybe. Hopefully. Void Thrasher down.
A void thrasher has been slain.
Might just go for the Zen of Stone while rebuilding all my stuff.
Hybrid detected.
So down here everything is going fine, I think. Yes. Getting the turrets and the turret missiles and everything is going well. Going up.
Upgrade is all done.
I mean, didn't get the full clear, but I don't think that's that much of a priority right now.
Don't waste my time. Walk the walk. What's in it for me? Walk the walk.
How is this Eloak not dying? I don't know.
Allies' base forces under attack. The boys are nice.
Skinny on the way.
You can't fix
Okay.
stupid. Don't
Oh,
Go ahead.
Enemy drop pods incoming.
okay, they got the drop pods. I'm going to death the drop pods. Maybe he can push out.
I'm a bad man.
The temple is under siege from a Void Thrasher. Slay it before it deals too much damage.
Waste my time.
Like, he can pretty easily slay that Void Thrasher. Like, he has a lot of Warbringers.
An upgrade's been completed.
Should probably get the secret stash. Get this thing.
Void thrasher eliminated.
Oh, there actually is nothing incoming and I have a medevac ready. So I can just move out.
You gonna bark all day?
Not really a problem right now.
Your ally. Enemy. For once.
What's in it for me? You can't fix stupid. I didn't hear no magic word.
There remains one last Zenith Stone.
It takes.
Hybrid energy signature detected.
Hope you all have strong
Yeah, those
stomachs.
turrets will be enough. Definitely. Yeah.
Man's gotta do
I'm
what
just
man
going
can
to
do.
lift myself.
The Zenith Stone
Get Nux.
regrettable but necessary.
I noticed.
Is his entire army dead? Please don't tell me it's... No, it's just standing at a weird position. Okay.
Must I compensate for your weakness?
Your ally ally needs your help. Your ally's base is getting knocked around.
Sure, why not?
Let's do this. Just stay out of my way. What's in it for
Like, I
me?
think this is going well. Is topside going well?
Get your head out of your six.
Topside is going well. I need to pre-clear for double thresher spawn.
Whatever it takes. Okay, armchair general.
Like, no one likes double thresher spawn. So it needs to be cleared out quick.
Don't waste my time.
Allies base under siege. You both know you need it. Upgrade completed.
Come on! All your units are literally inside your base. Just kill it.
Enemy drop pods incoming.
Yeah.
The base is under assault.
A man's gotta do
All your units are on top there. How do you not manage to actually kill anything? Holy fuck. Okay.
Your allies' forces are attacking.
Enemy drop pods incoming.
Your precious base under attack.
Amon's forces are attacking the temple.
looks like we
Come on. Like, one person should be able to def the fucking base. Like, it's not that hard.
Big dog is off the leash.
Your ally needs your
Come on.
Drop pods incoming. Enemy drop pods incoming.
engaged your forces.
Okay. So I'm pretty sure that base down there is going to be built up pretty soon. Kinda dislike that. Yeah. But I
Temple is nearly
think
operational.
I'll
Stand firm,
first
Commanders.
clear out
Battle is almost won.
this one for the hybrids.
What do you know? We might just survive this thing.
I think the hybrid is, yeah, the hybrid is spawning on top of that thing.
Direct your forces accordingly.
okay, armchair general.
Your allies' base is under attack.
Compensate for your weakness.
Your allies fighting the enemy for once.
How did my healing thing die? I don't know.
Avoid Thrasher's
Doesn't
death
matter.
has been confirmed.
Don't provoke me.
Do you still not have detection, my dude? Oh, I lost a guy.
What's in it for me?
Probably shouldn't be focused so much on the mistake my ally makes and just, you know, be focused on the mistakes I make.
Your army
Hybrid
is under
signature
attack.
detected.
Also put down a turret way too far in the back.
With a challenge. And I got it.
Step ahead. Okay, armchair general.
All right with me.
Just stay out of my way. Fair enough. Whatever it takes.
Even my
Your ally is fighting the enemy.
put up more of a fight than you.
Void Thrasher neutralized.
A man's gotta do what a man's gotta do.
Okay.
I didn't hear no magic word.
So, I'll probably wait down here to spawn camp that wave, because he's totally going to be able to def that.
Don't waste my time.
Is that thing actually burning? No. Yeah, I'm going to spawn camp and then teleport back. This looks like a
General. You
good
can't
idea.
fix.
Oh, that's actually a drone down here.
Man's
Okay.
gotta do what a man's gotta do.
Yeah. Spawn camping the last wave.
Structures put up
Seems pretty smart.
Forces are attacking. You know you need
What?
allies' base needs your help.
Okay. Or they just spawn way ahead of me. Okay.
You can't fix stupid.
Maybe I'm just an idiot. Okay.
Allies' forces are under attack.
Where are all the roaches buried?
Your allies' base is under attack.
go time.
I didn't hear no magic
Ah.
word.
It's not like
Armchair general.
this is going to really matter, but hey, yeah. Should have probably done the spawn camp a little bit better.
A man's gotta do what a man's gotta do.
The temple has been primed. Its activation will eradicate Amon's remaining forces. Well done, commanders.
Wait, why did my stream show the level up quicker than... What? Oh, I'm confused. Okay. So, like it's weird, like I'm pretty sure I have a viewer that... Nah, I don't know. I'm pretty sure I have a viewer, yes. That's what I can be sure of. I'm pretty sure that's multiple people that just don't say anything, but are still watching. I don't know, but I'm on 4 viewers right now. Nice. Oh god, Dead of Night. Although Kerrigan has a pretty high clear speed, so
It'll be better this time.
queuing the second guy.
This planet is in serious trouble. This
Typing super slow.
won't be any survivors. We need to stop it. It's risky to move at night, but the infested die off during the day. When the sun is
Defend
out,
you.
go out and burn
What the
their
fuck?
structures.
Defend what? I'm confused. Wait, that totally isn't a Vespine thingy. What the fuck was I doing? But yeah, this is going to... No, I can now actually do the NG Bay on top of the timing, can't I? Yeah, I think so. I think I can also go for double gas on this map. If I remember everything correctly. And I think I fucked something up because I'm supposed to be able to get +1 weapons as well. Oh, I might actually be able to. Why not?
Night's almost here. I'd start
Yeah,
getting ready to
worked
take
out
the rest of it for you.
perfectly. So I can kill some of the things here.
Well, ain't I the I didn't hear no magic word. A man's gotta do what a man's gotta do.
Yeah, probably going to just fuck up 5 structures and then come back.
Don't get too bold out there. If our base falls to the infested, this planet will be lost.
Or just 3. 3 is enough, yeah. I'm going back.
The enemy is attacking your SCVs.
Oh no, why does it have to be Hunterlings? Come on.
Look out for
Flick.
those Hunterlings. They're fast, and boy can they jump.
Walk the walk. Okay.
Okay, so I need my turrets on the backside.
Your allies fighting the enemy for once. SCV's under attack. Save the boys.
Is there the next hunter? Oh god, all my SCVs are dying. Fuck off with that stuff. Yeah, but as soon as my turret is done, those will be less of a problem.
Your ally needs your help. It's that desperate.
So, yeah, and then I need my second of these, my gunslinger hideout,
Need your help.
and my medivac platform. Oh, min worlds. I like min worlds.
Enemies attacking your allies' base. Better than hitting yours, I guess.
Does he have... How did they even get in? Those aren't even hunterlings. Those are like basic zombies. Like, how did that shit happen? Wait. Have they increased the number? What the fuck? Okay.
Upgrade is all done.
The night's almost over. We'll be safe to move out again in the daytime.
Okay. This looks like it's going to work.
Army under attack.
Kerrigan is getting hunterling stun locked, but doesn't really matter.
We need to destroy enough of it each day. Head to these coordinates to start.
Should get my last upgrade building.
Looks like we got an outlaw ready to join us.
Yep, we got an outlaw ready to join us. Oh, very true.
Upgrades finished up.
I've got another sector with structures on my scanners.
Not really the thing I can afford right now, but it's ready, definitely.
Upgrade complete.
Yeah. Now I'm getting Blaze. Okay. So
Looks like we can find additional structures here.
I'm sensing cloaked units. We need some detection out here.
I don't really have detection, except this. Oh, Kerrigan has a detector, isn't she?
Big dog is ready for a walk.
Yeah.
Alright. It looks like we've taken out a good amount of infestation. Just need to keep it up.
Your upgrade is complete.
That's always nice to hear.
Looks like the sun's about to set. Get ready for nightfall.
Kerrigan is already moving back. Wait, there's 3 structures that I actually never cleared. Oh, Rattlesnake can solo them. The rest should split upwards.
Just keep fighting, commanders. We'll make it through the night.
Alright, get on this shit.
Like the hustle. But I advise against it, commanders. It'll be easier to take out the structures in the
So, just finishing off this one.
Allies, your ally has engaged the enemy. Both know you need them.
You can't fix stupid. Whatever it takes.
Killing all this stuff.
Upgrade completed. Your forces are just a little bit better.
Yeah, totally getting serious. Oh no, only definitely topside as soon as I actually need to have topside. Seems like a smart move.
Sure, why not?
Though, they actually seem like they're going for topside right now.
Don't provoke me.
Looks like they're trying to tear down a barricade.
Skinny on the way. Move it.
You gonna bark all day? Fight fire with fire.
Do I already have the explosion upgrade? Yes. Cool.
I'm a bad man. I'm a bad.
We call these ones kaboomers. They spit acid and they explode.
Why did I move downwards? I don't know.
Upgrade is all done.
Why are there 3 elite enemies in a stack? I don't know. Like, that asset is totally going to fry that lurker.
Fix stupid. You can't fix stupid. Whatever it takes.
Getting... Oh! Yeah, should probably get defense 3, especially on this map.
It's gonna be a long night.
Gonna bark all day.
Your allies' base is under attack.
Stupid.
Your allies' forces are attacking.
I didn't hear no magic word.
Don't give up, commanders. This nightmare is about to end.
It's time to assimilate some resources.
Your allies fighting the enemy for once.
Yes, is he actually going to get... Why did he activate that on 4 enemies? What the fuck?
You can't fix stupid.
Okay, totally need to push upward now.
Let's get to work, commanders. We have to burn enough of the infestation today so that we don't fall behind. Detecting more structures at this location.
A man's gotta do what a man's gotta do. Let's get cooking. Don't waste my time.
Probably going to get my Humoyan signal modulator. God, that is an important upgrade.
Whatever it takes. Sights this way.
I'm all about that.
Even Patrick isn't chatting anymore. What the fuck? Is Kerrigan even clearing anything? No. Come on. Like, I don't want to defend 5 days on Brutal. That's not really a thing that one can keep up.
Upgrade completed. Your forces are just a little bit better.
Huh? Oh, yeah. Structures on there.
No magic word. Whatever it takes.
Just like old.
What's in it for me? Walk the walk. You can't fix stupid. Okay, armchair general. A man's gotta do what a man's gotta do. Whatever it takes.
Getting that stuff up here.
Okay, armchair general.
Come on, I just want to have left side done by night 2.
Your ally has engaged the enemy.
Make the most of the
Or by
day,
night...
commanders.
Yeah, by night 2.
It's over.
Now, night 3. Yes, night 3.
You can't fix.
Your ally is fighting the enemy. For once.
We're not done yet, commanders. Here's some more structures to burn out.
Word.
Here come the infested. We have to hold them off until sunrise. You sure you want to do that at night, commanders? The infested will be here any minute. Looks like there's a viral phage among the infested. Might be a good idea to kill it, but we can only do that at night. Don't worry if you can't kill the viral phage tonight. I'm sure it'll be back tomorrow.
Yeah, General.
Oh, it's off. I got you. Sure.
Allies'
The
forces
infested
are
are trying to
under
break through one of our barricades.
I am beyond death.
You can't fix.
Why did she say that?
One of
Did
our
she just
barricades
actually
is
die?
hard.
Please don't tell me she just actually died. Like,
Allies'
The
base
enemy
needs
is
your
in my
help.
grip. Move in for the kill.
You just saved me a lot of trouble, commanders. I was gonna send a crew to exterminate that thing after this mission.
Allies' forces are attacking.
Whatever it takes. You can't
Forces under attack. The boys are next. Your allies' base is getting knocked around. Your ally needs your help.
is the structure actually not that? Okay.
walk the walk.
Your allies enemies attacking your allies' base. Better than hitting yours, I guess.
A man's gotta do what a man's gotta do.
So, getting down those buildings.
Your ally has
Yeah,
engaged
all
the
those
enemy.
defense upgrades for
Your
Cannonball.
allies' base under siege. We both know you need them.
Is that actually going to do anything to the Kerrigan base? No, not really.
It'll be easier to take out the structures in the daytime.
Whatever it takes.
Allies' forces
But I'm
under
going
attack.
towards the stank, I think.
Walk the walk.
Even though I don't have
Allies fighting the enemy.
cooked Sam.
Allies' base needs your help.
Walk the walk.
Got it. Sure. All right with me.
Looks like Amon wants a piece of us too. Get those defenses in place. Oh, no, not a stank. If we don't kill it, it'll keep attacking us even after
Wait,
sunrise.
why did she now talk about the stank when the stank is now exactly dead?
I didn't hear no magic word.
Get your head out
Your
of
allies'
your
base
Get
is
up.
under attack.
Night's coming to an end soon.
Your allies fighting the enemy for once.
Okay, armchair general.
Does he actually defend the drop? No.
Your army is under attack. The enemy engaged your forces. Enemies attacking your allies' forces.
What the fuck? Why are you not defending the fucking drop?
Get on board.
My turrets somehow have managed to defend most of it. Okay.
Sure thing.
But still, what the fuck? Defend your... You're the guy with the defense stuff. You should be able to defend the drops. Why did I get my secret stash impact last? It's like... It's actually a really good damage upgrade.
Why not? First round's on me. Believe it.
Okay, so...
Don't waste my
86...
Understood.
Your ally has engaged the enemy.
Got all my upgrades for now.
general. A man's gotta do what
Oh, Kerrigan is actually clearing out something.
Commanders, keep it up and we can still save this planet.
I'm a bang.
Sending you the coordinates for more structures.
Sure thing. Yep.
Don't provoke
Your allies fighting the enemy for once.
Why not?
Yeah, come on.
Oh, gotta love Cannonball's tankiness.
All day.
Your ally has engaged the enemy.
Okay, armchair general.
Your ally is fighting the enemy. For once.
Whatever it takes.
The enemy's biomass will provide us resources.
Allies army under attack. Spin to hope they're in front.
A man's gotta do what a man's gotta do. I didn't hear no magic word.
So this is going well.
Looks like we can find additional structures here.
It's that desperate.
Might actually be a clear now or next night. I'm not sure.
Whatever it takes.
I'll definitely push into the night.
Okay,
Another day's coming to an end.
whatever it takes.
I'm not...
Your allies fighting the enemy for
Uh,
once.
If Kerrigan is pushing into the night, I'm not going to push into the night, but probably as soon as I retreat, she does as well, and then we need to def the whole night.
I'm a bad man.
Sure, why not?
We've burned out almost all of the infestation. Let's finish the job. I knew the infestation was
Oh,
bad.
Blaze is on top, okay.
Crazy. Hold them off. Don't get too bold out there. If our base falls to the infested, this planet
Okay,
will be
Kerrigan is retreating, so I can keep pushing.
Don't waste my time.
Yeah. Totally just focus on the infested buildings.
Your ally needs your help. You engage the enemy. The allies' base under siege. We both know you need them. Allies' forces are under attack.
Yeah, I know that my allies' forces are under attack.
Sure you want to do that at night, Commander? The infested will be
Yeah,
here
I'm
any
very sure I want to do that at night. Definitely.
The enemy engaged your forces.
That isn't here, no man.
In the rear with the gear.
Your ally is fighting the enemy. Allies' base needs your help.
Move it. Oh, I'm not doing so hot over here, boss.
Forces under attack. The boys are next.
A man, don't provoke me.
Your allies' forces are attacking.
like the hustle, but I'd advise against it, Commanders. It'll be easier to take out the structures in the daytime.
The enemy's biomass will
armor is
provide
under
us
attack.
resources.
Move it.
That stank is strong enough to withstand sunlight. We have
Oh,
to
that
kill it
stank is
ourselves.
pretty much instantly going down, right? Yes. Okay.
They're in front.
Smells like victory.
Your allies' base is getting knocked around. Your ally
Don't get too
needs your
bold
help.
out there. If our base falls to the infested, this planet will be lost.
Walk the walk.
Yeah. Kerrigan
That
is
isn't here, no magic.
holding it pretty well,
On purpose?
Okay,
even though that not completely not pushing for an entire night was kind of a bad idea, but
For once. Your allies' base is getting knocked around.
Are
that
you kidding me?
Kabuma actually
Anyone
doing
wants to attack us now
something?
too?
Not really.
Perfect.
Don't leave me hanging.
Your allies fighting the enemy for once. The enemy engaged your forces. Allies'
Sure you
base
want to do
needs
that
your
at night, Commander?
Pew, pew,
The infested
pew,
will
pew,
be here
barrage.
help.
Okay.
Allies' base is under attack.
We can do this, Commanders. It's almost sunrise.
Your allies' forces are attacking.
hope this
There
thing's
is not.
assured.
Your allies
Do you actually not have any anti-air?
attacking your allies' base.
What the fuck?
Better than hitting yours, I guess.
Alright, get on the ship, you numbskulls.
Actually,
Allies' forces are under attack.
the fuck are you going to have zero anti-air?
That's our cue to move. We won't have enough time
Come on.
to destroy too few structures today.
Walk the walk.
Oh god.
Let out.
A stand? Those things are resistant to sunlight. We have to be the ones to kill it.
Why not?
You gonna bark all day? You can't fix stupid.
Okay.
Sights this way.
I'm currently
Don't provoke me.
moving between stuff way too much.
That isn't here, no magic word.
I don't know why I said sorry. I also kinda fucked up stuff.
You can't fix stupid. Okay.
Your ally has engaged the enemy.
Oh,
Walk the walk.
That's the last of it. The planet's
GG.
and we have you to thank.
GG!
I'm getting my next level. Oh, that holiday bonus is going really well. And now I can have 3 medevacs, so I can actually be mobile. Why the fuck did I unlock the Sagara profile picture? Like, I'm not playing Sagara. Yeah, did I actually wanted to do something? I think, yeah, I could have just used the instant collection link, but I'm just going to do this. I mean, it's not taking longer than just clicking collection. Ah, that probably takes a little bit longer, but not really. Do I actually not have the announcer I'm currently looking for? No. The definite best announcer. Where is it? There. Yeah, this is not showing. That's nice. Probably still shouldn't have shown my password length on stream. Does this button now button do something? No. This works, this works. Do I need to restart for this? I think I need to restart for this. Ah, fwick. Do I want to restart for this? Yes. This is important. This is very important. Everyone knows that the Statman announcer is the best one. Collection. Oh, it didn't even do a load thing. That's nice. Where is he? Statman. Can I just... No, I don't want to hide owned. I want to hide non-owned. But okay, I guess. Okay. No, wait. I'm on the wrong server again. Like, I don't need to... level my Tychus on here. And I need to change my announcer on here. Bam. Bam. Tychus is getting leveled. Bam. Everything will work out. Yes. Do you guys get music while I'm tapped out, or does the music also pause? Because that would be kind of bad. No, there's no desktop audio. Okay. So, I need to activate plain background. Why did no one tell me that? Like, come on. That's kind of important. Wait, why do I not have any music now? Yeah, there's music. It's just kind of silent. Also, there literally is no life in my aquarium. Why am I not turning off the fucking filter? Like, it's kind of annoying to constantly have that sound. Yeah, I should do that right now. I mean, the load time still a little bit. Yeah, that's the filter. Okay. Finally, silence.
War games. This will be great for my research.
Where the fuck are... Oh, that map, okay. Chain of Ascension.
The rite of Rakshir will soon begin.
This is not an NG first map, I think.
Gain control of the Tal'Darim by climbing the chain of ascension. As first ascendant, I will exterminate these traitors.
I mean,
Armies must
every map kinda is an NG.
psionic support.
No, like, On some I would go NG before gas, and on this one not. So I guess, yeah. Instantly going to go muscle armor after this. Honestly, I'll have a bunch of minerals spare on this map, so I can also do the second energy right now. Yeah, this seems to be all working out fine. That's kinda close whether I get enough minerals.
Don't waste my time.
It's like delayed by 2 seconds, who the fuck cares?
Rattlesnake on the job.
What's in it for me? Walk the walk. You can't fix stupid.
Like he doesn't have any units yet, so trying to push isn't really of any use.
Support his champion. Prepare to meet them in combat.
The enemy's attack will be upon us soon.
Sometimes I question why I do things. And hey.
Don't provoke me.
Temporal anomaly established. Strike now, warriors.
Fix stupid. A man's gotta do what a man's gotta do. Okay.
How long is that time stop actually going to last?
Get your head out of your six.
I don't know, but I can have my CC now.
Allies are fighting the bad guys.
Yes, I know. My allies are fighting the bad guys. Oh no, he has a status thing. Why would you get that status thing? Like, I want to kill stuff. Thanks.
I thought there were two of you in this fight. I expect support from both. Send your armies to my side.
What's going on? Yep. Upgrade's done. SCV ready. You are going to love that upgrade.
Yeah, I'm totally going to. That's a pretty nice upgrade. I must agree with that, man.
These hybrids possess immense psionic power. Destroy them, or that power will belong to their champion.
Can't fix stupid. Okay, armchair general.
Oh, they actually have a Dominator with them.
I'm a bad man. A man's gotta do what a man's gotta do. Yeah. Don't waste my time. Don't provoke me. I'm a bad man.
I actually got the right Medikit upgrade. Nice.
Upgrade complete.
Okay, armchair general. Walk the walk. Don't waste my
God, I hate that stasis upgrade. It just makes killing stuff slower.
Big job, huh? We here.
Don't provoke me.
Huh?
this guy totally exists.
Some outlaw recruiting.
You gonna bark?
Over here with the gear.
Hostile forces are hitting our allies.
Oh, is he actually... Wait, that's just Shadow Guard. Okay. He just tried to get the last bit of value out of his Shadow Guard. That actually makes sense.
Hear no magic word. A man's gotta do what a man's gotta do. Whatever it takes. You can't fix stupid. Okay, armchair general.
Yeah, probably Sirius second. I just like Sirius. Like everyone likes Sirius. Like Sirius has the highest amount of damage. So why would you actually not like Sirius?
Forces are zeroing in on our base. Keep your eyes peeled.
It takes. I didn't hear no magic word. You can't fix stupid.
Move it.
Don't waste my time.
So he's totally in position to deal with that. Nice.
I will need them in order to win Rakshir.
Understood.
Amon's worshippers are
Oh yeah,
augmenting
he has
the
an attack
champion's
wave on there.
power. Do not allow this to continue.
Do what a
Pack
man's
your
gotta
bags.
do.
I sense several elementals nearby. Their psionic bleeding is distracting me. Silence them.
Is he actually losing to the attack wave?
I'm a bad man.
Oh, what the fuck is that attack wave? Okay.
All right with me.
I didn't. You gonna bark all day? Don't waste my time.
Big job, huh?
I need my third medivac thingy.
What's in it for me?
Move it.
I like the missiles.
Bad man.
Such troublesome creatures. Slay the last one when you have the chance.
Okay.
Spectres here.
No, they aren't actually in air composition. What am I doing?
What's in it?
Why did I think that was an air composition? Probably because I was just fighting the slain elemental and that's an air target. Maybe. Am I already on perfect workers? Kinda. If this one would actually work.
Don't waste my time.
Hybrids. I cannot stand against them for long. Kill them before I am overwhelmed.
What's in it for me? A man's gotta do what a man's gotta do.
Understood.
Rattlesnake, do stuff. Thanks.
Understood.
Just stay out of my way.
A man's gotta do what a man's gotta
You
do.
are going to love that upgrade.
Don't provoke me. You gonna bark all day? Okay, armchair general. Whatever it takes.
All right. Get on the
What's
ship,
in it
you
for me?
numbskulls.
Don't provoke me. A man's gotta do what a
Who
man's
wants to
gotta
go
do.
for a ride?
You gonna bark all day?
Oh god, having the medivacs is so nice. Actually being able to move my army.
I'm a bad man. What's in it for me?
Okay.
All right with me.
Okay, armchair general.
Stop in time now.
But why?
You can't fix stupid.
Why would you stop time now? Like maybe wait till we have reached the enemy.
Okay, armchair general. You can't fix stupid. I didn't hear no magic word. I'm a bad man.
Believe it.
Yeah, I should probably just target fire that thing.
The walk. whatever it takes.
Pack your bags
Yeah.
and get on board.
Probably going to... Yeah, I kind of want to destroy Dominators, so I need these.
You gonna bark all day? A man's gotta do what a man's gotta do.
Probably going to quit the stream after this match. Yeah, kinda need to get up early.
Amon's hybrids are greatly enhancing his champion's strength. They must be eliminated.
On the other hand, there's 5 viewers, and
Is there no
you know,
end to this
if you
elemental
all would
burning?
actually type in
Crush
chat,
this
I
one if
might
you can spare the warriors
finally
to
get
do
that
so.
5 active chatters achievement.
They're walking right behind our backs. Let's get some detection going.
I'm not sure if I'm actually hitting the right targets.
An outlaw's down. That can bring them back at the bar.
Also, stuff is totally dying. And I should have just barraged into that thing.
All my life.
Boom, boom, boom.
What can it do for you? Not a problem. Sure, why not?
Our allies are being attacked.
Yes. Like a millimeter away from my screen. Thanks, announcer.
Don't leave me hanging. First round's on.
You are going to love that upgrade.
Oh, it's on. Why?
What was that thing? Oh yeah, big red button. Obviously.
It's about to get heavy. Of course. Sure. Got it.
Sure, why not?
It's go time.
Prepare yourselves. The enemy is inbound on our base.
You guys are attacking your allies' base.
All about it.
All of the elementals have been eradicated. Now return your full attention to Rakshir.
All right.
Your
Get
allies'
on that
base is
shit,
under
you
attack.
numbskulls.
Go save the day.
Who wants
Yes,
to
totally
go
needed a
for
time
that?
stop for that.
What's in it
Definitely.
for me?
Wait, is there still something left?
Okay, armchair general. You
I-
can't fix.
I'm kinda sure there's not. Wait,
All right. Get on
I missed
that
a single unit.
Numbskulls, don't provoke me. A man.
I missed a single Protoss CG boy.
You gonna bark all day?
Yeah, that's... That has costed me a medevac.
Forces are under attack. The bad guys
And a
are
lot of
attacking
time.
your friends.
I didn't hear no magic word. A man's gotta do what a man's gotta do.
Oh, top side already is cleared out.
You can't.
You must send your armies to support me so I can decimate this rebellion.
What's in it for me? A man's gotta do what a man's gotta do. I didn't hear.
It seems the enemy has established fortifications on the path to the pit. Be prepared to set them ablaze. We are close to victory. Be vigilant.
It's go time.
Walk the walk.
Oblivion awaits Amon's minions. Maintain your psionic support.
Is the stuff just
Massive
instantly
psionic
dying?
power flows into Amon's champions
Oh,
and
not really.
rivals. Slay them quickly.
What's in it for me?
Hostile forces are hitting our allies.
I didn't hear no magic word.
Pack your bags and get on board.
I'm a bad man.
Okay,
Don't provoke me.
that went reasonably well. Ah, fuck, those things are coming back, okay.
A man's gotta do what a
Yeah, but now they needed to get in line to actually hit stuff.
I'm a bad man.
Oh, yeah, and there's the boop.
Well done.
And he gets booped down into the death pit.
Voices in my head are silent.
Oh yeah, the 5-finger discount. But yeah, I'm actually going to quit right now because I need to get to work early tomorrow. So, I might host someone. Yeah. Guess I'll do that. Or not wait someone. I mean, I might also host someone, but... yeah. Why are only 3 viewers ready to wait? Like, I have 5. Come on. Like, if I only have 3 viewers ready to... Why does this show 5 people watching now if 3 are ready to wait? Come on. Nah. 3 are kinda too... little to matter. Yeah. Fuck it. Like, I don't want to be the guy that waits a stream with 3